The Telltale Heart versus the Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe.
The mood of the Telltale Heart was uneasy, and the narrator described the story very slowly and cautiously, which built up suspense. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine, and this quote shows how cautious and precise the narrator was going about the murder of the old man. And another mood was dark and disturbing because he was very happy after the murder and felt a sense of accomplishment. I smiled, for what had I to fear? And this quote shows how carefree and joyful the narrator was directly after murdering someone. And this made us feel very disturbed because you shouldn't really be happy after you just killed someone.
The mood of the Black Cat. The Black Cat gives us many feelings, but the most prominent one is disturbed. The man was insane, and at one point he was so insane that he cut out his cat's eye, and then he killed his cat, and then after that he killed his wife. It's really morbid, and it makes you wonder how somebody thinks of that stuff to write. And what makes it worse is that he was happy after it. He said, "My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deed disturbed me but little." This quote shows his insanity and adds to another mood of threatened.
Comparing and contrasting the mood, we found several similarities and differences. For similarities, we found that they were both dark, as it follows a disturbed man who ends up killing other people. Like, how is that not dark? And then they both inspire fear in the reader because of how intense the man's feelings of hatred are towards the humans and animals throughout the story. The differences we found was the Black Cat all happens really quickly and spontaneously, because the man doesn't plan out anything, he just reacts and has really impulsive decisions, whereas the Telltale Heart is very slow and has the suspense building, allowing the reader to infer what may happen and get frightened.
The tone of the Telltale Heart. In the Telltale Heart, the tone changes as the story goes on. So at first it's insane because the author is trying to tell us that he isn't insane when really he is. And then he starts to describe the old man and his eye, which he calls the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. And he gets really annoyed with the eye, and he decides to kill the man to get rid of the eye. And after he kills the man, he's triumphant because he says, "His eye would trouble me no more." Then he's confident with his murder, and he thinks that nobody will find out what happened. So when the police come, he invites them in, and he puts his chair above the spot where his body is. And when he's talking to the police, he gets really nervous because he thinks he hears the old man's heartbeat, and he just wants it to stop. So he tells the police where the body is and that he killed him.
The tone of the Black Cat we found changed as the author changed feelings towards the cat. It started off annoyed because the author finds really faults, like tons of faults in the cat, using it as a scapegoat for his own problems. Then he becomes scared of the cat because he's like superstitious, and he just became really nervous around it and tried to avoid it. Then he changed to being murderous as he enters a rage and physically hurts the cat, later killing it. After the murder, he's oddly calm because he's happy and at ease, and you shouldn't be like that after killing a cat and your wife. And we agreed that the author was probably insane because he's not stable and slowly going mad. The quote we found to support this was, "I soundly and tranquilly slept. I even slept with the burden of murder upon my soul." It's like, no one should be able to do that.
Okay, so comparing the tone between the two stories, so some similarities we found was that in both stories the narrators were insane, and they both tried to convince you of their sanity, only making them seem more insane. And another tone in both stories was annoyed, and in the Telltale Heart, the eye was what annoyed the narrator, but in the Black Cat, the cat was what annoyed the narrator, and he blamed it for lots of his own problems. And another tone was nervous and scared, and in the Telltale Heart, the narrator was nervous when the police came into the house and stayed for an extended period of time. He later confessed to the murder. And in the Black Cat, the narrator is scared of the cat as his annoyance for it grew. And one difference we found between the two stories was that after murdering the old man in Telltale Heart, the narrator was triumphant. But after murdering the cat and his wife in the Black Cat, the narrator became oddly calm.
The irony of Telltale Heart, we found that the dramatic irony was, we know the butler had killed the old man, but the police do not, so they're kind of out of the loop of this. and we know they won't find anything because of how planned the murder was. The situational irony was the confidence of the butler as he talks and leads us to believe that he'll get away with the crime, but his guilt leads him to tell the police what happened and get taken away. The verbal irony we find is the butler continues to tell himself that he's not mad, trying to stay sane, but we know this is not true because he goes and kills the man. The evidence we found was, no doubt, I grew very pale, but talked more fluently with a heightened voice. This is the man talking to the police in the situational irony.
The irony that we found in the black cat was dramatic irony, because we knew he murdered his cats and wife while other characters in the story didn't know. And also when the police were searching the house, they didn't know that the cat and the wife were hidden in the wall, but we as the reader did. And a piece of situational irony was found that a cat just like the one he hung appears in his yard, and he also took this cat home, which we would not expect him to do considering he killed one exactly like it. And we didn't expect this as he had just murdered his other cat that looked just like it, as I said. And verbal irony was when the narrator tries to convince us that he's not mad, but he is obviously insane, and the more he tries to say he's not mad, convinces us that he is insane.
Some similarities with the irony is that both stories had all three types of irony, and the dramatic irony was similar because we knew about the murders, but the police didn't. And the verbal irony was also similar because both the narrators kept telling us that they weren't mad, when they really were. And both stories had some of the same situational irony, but it wasn't all the same. But in both stories, the narrator made you think that he was going to get away with the crime, but they ended up getting caught. And the one difference in the irony was that in the black cat, there was another cat that comes along, and you wouldn't expect the narrator to bring it home because he just killed his other cat, but he does, and so that makes it situational irony.
Thanks for watching.
And just for the record, Edgar Allan Poe obviously has an issue of eyes, so these are all for him. Enjoy!